Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
It's hats on the hill as we head to Washington, D.C. for NCBA's legislative conference. Plus, we'll have an update on key policy issues that could impact your cattle operation.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Ochsner. Recently, cattlemen and women from across the country were in Washington, D.C. for the NCBA Legislative Conference. It offers attendees a chance to meet with policymakers and deliver a unified message about issues and regulations that impact the beef industry. Here's a closer look at this important event.
Each year, hundreds of cattle producers from across the country travel to Washington, D.C. to make sure their voices are heard by decision makers in our nation's capital. Attendees of NCBA's legislative conference get a chance to meet with elected officials to discuss the biggest issues in the cattle industry.
Nobody can tell your story like you can, and that's why you need to be here and tell how you're affected by whatever the issue might be, whether it be gray wolves, whether it be a water issue, a wildfire. Nobody can tell your story like yourself can, so that's why it's important to be here.
The industry changes extremely fast these days, and so do the issues. So you have to come and kind of remind them what's going on and what's important. Not only for the long run, but what's happening right in the short run today.
The three-day event kicked off with a rooftop meet and greet, followed by an in-depth issues update led by NCBA's Washington, D.C. staff. Then it was time for Hats on the Hill, as cattlemen and women visited with lawmakers and their staff to explain how their decisions can impact farmers and ranchers nationwide.
I can't overstate how important it is for cattlemen to take the time to get away from the operations to come to Washington, D.C. in order for our congressmen and senators and agency folks to see us in person and hear what we need back home to stay in business. That personal relationship, it means everything in the world as opposed to just a phone call.
They are always very grateful to actually see individuals from their district or even their state in person and have those real life stories about the impacts, and they really use that on the floor when they're giving their testimony or providing their comments to see how policy may need to change.
They're busy here, they might be farmers and ranchers, or they might just be representatives that represent us, and we have to make sure that they understand what it looks like, what that picture is, whether that be Oklahoma, Nevada, Texas, Nebraska, what's that look like in their rural area communities?
Meeting with elected officials was just one part of the event. Many attendees also visited the federal agencies responsible for regulating how they do business on a daily basis. It's just a small sample of the same work done every day by NCBA's staff in their Washington, D.C. office.
It makes you so appreciative of our staff back here and just the work they have to do and how long it takes. But when you can substantiate that with producer stories that really showcase the impact, then it just makes the message that much more real.
You want to wear comfortable shoes, that's for sure, because there's a lot of sidewalk time getting to all these meetings, and I was talking to a delegation from Texas. They did 15 meetings today. I don't know how they got it done, but yeah, it's intense.
A strong showing for the legislative conference in Washington, D.C. helps remind lawmakers and regulators how their decisions impact the bottom line of our nation's cattle producers.
We go out and we produce the most wholesome beef product that we all want to enjoy, and we need to come here to tell our story, to tell our representatives and senators what we do on a daily basis and how it affects us.
People think one voice in Washington, D.C. does not make a difference. That is not true. One voice, one person can truly make a difference on a relationship, and for a person in control of a policy or legislation or rulemaking, to hear our voice really means a lot. It can make a true impact.
If you're not at the table visiting with these folks, you're going to get run over and you're not going to like the results. So do you want to be part of the process, or do you want to live what the process gives you? So be part of the process is what I'd say.
Reporting from the Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C., I'm Brad Bullough for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
And joining me now from Washington, D.C. is Ethan Lane, Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for NCBA. Ethan, how does the NCBA Legislative Conference help support the work your team is already doing every day in Washington, D.C.?
Well, we're talking to these lawmakers and their staffs constantly in Washington on a range of issues in the NCBA policy book brought forth by various state affiliates around the country over a number of years. But nothing replaces that member to producer, member to constituent conversation that happens during legislative conference when we have hundreds of NCBA members that raise cattle from around the country up in DC, talking to their members of Congress, talking to their senators, and advocating for those positions themselves. It really resonates in a way that nothing else does.
So I'm curious, what do you hear from members of Congress and their staff after this event?
You know, it's always interesting. After a legislative conference, we spend weeks on follow-up requests and more information and talking to staffers about what they heard from our members. That sort of after effect of having all of our members in town like this is really something to be seen to be believed, because it really generates a lot of discussion on a ton of topics. And you know, right now it's incredibly timely, just given some of the legislation that's moving through the body right now. We're talking about another piece of the Farm Bill getting across the finish line, appropriations, things like that. So there's going to be a lot of issues after this conference to work on with staff generated by these meetings this week.
What are a couple of the key topics you asked producers, Ethan, to focus on in their discussion this year with policymakers?
Well, it's really timely that they're here a week before we expect to have a Farm Bill markup on this last piece of the Farm Bill on the House floor. So we're going to have the ability to send a couple hundred cattle producers to Capitol Hill with fresh feedback for their members of Congress on how they'd like to see them vote. We're also having them take up some of our traditional issues that we're working on in the process. We need some work done in the surface transportation arena, truck weights, and those changes between different states are a real problem for a lot of our producers. We continue to see a real need to protect some of the appropriations riders that we have used over the years dealing with things like electronic logging devices. So we have a lot of those type of things that our producers are going to be talking to members of Congress about, as well as really making sure they have a full understanding of why our members are so opposed to the Schumer beef bill that we saw emerge here about a month or so ago. It's sort of a collection of bad ideas from vegan senators like Cory Booker, animal rights activist groups. All of it would drive beef prices up and cattle prices down. So we're going to spend a lot of time this week educating particularly Democrats in the Senate about what a bad idea that is, and they're going to hear it firsthand from their constituents.
So one other question, why is it so important for producers to engage with members of Congress other times of the year in addition to legislative conference?
It is always important for our producers to be engaging with their members of Congress. They need to hear from you as cattle producers about what's important to you on your operation and in your community. And if you don't fill that gap with information, some of these jokers on the internet with podcasters or fake cowboys or whoever else are going to show up here and speak for you. This is why trade associations are so important. We come up with these policies together. It's input from producers all across the country. We deliver these messages to Washington on behalf of hundreds of thousands of producers that have participated in that process. You never want to give up that opportunity, so take it every chance you get it.
Membership drives the important work being done by NCBA on Capitol Hill, and you can become a member by calling 866-233-3872 or visiting the website, that's ncba.org. When we come back, we'll have more on the recent legislative conference in Washington, D.C. Stay with us.
When the herd's hungry, John Deere balers deliver. High-capacity pickup powers through the heaviest windrows. Experience baler automation with speed, gate, and weave technology, allowing you to do a better job with less effort. Built-in features track moisture and weight, while you monitor and manage it, all from your phone or display. Because every bale matters, and so does the equipment you trust.
Are you concerned about the impact government policies could have on your cattle business? One way to make your voice heard in Washington is by joining NCBA. When you join, you'll be part of the nation's oldest and largest national cattle industry organization that has a professional team working in Washington, D.C. on issues that matter to cattle-producing families nationwide. Don't stay on the sidelines. Make your voice heard by joining NCBA today at the website ncba.org.
Welcome back as we continue our coverage of the NCBA Legislative Conference. This event gives producers a chance to meet with their members of Congress about a variety of issues affecting the beef industry. Reporter Lane Nordland has more from Washington.
During this year's legislative conference in Washington, D.C., cattlemen and women had the opportunity to hear directly from the chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, Representative G.T. Thompson. And Mr. Chairman, what is it like being face-to-face with producers here this week, and how does that help you in your decision-making up on Capitol Hill?
Well, Lane, thanks for the opportunity just to be able to talk. Much appreciated. I love the cattlemen and really appreciate them. And that's part of it. The best part of the job for me is the interaction with our producers. Here with the cattlemen, it's the men and women that work so hard to, provided that great tasting beef. They're the ones that take green grass and blue sky and make red meat. And so it's important. It's important that they do that too, that they come to Capitol Hill and they be able to tell their story and to share that with members of Congress, some that really are, have never had a direct connection to ranching, to cattle, or to agriculture as a whole. And so that's why it's so important and so beneficial to have them here.
Well, just like my family back at home, it's a busy time. We are spring calving. Yeah. We can't come out here all the time. That's why it's important to have the NCBA DC office. You and your staff work with the team here in DC every single day. How important is that in the decision making as well?
It's really important. I'm very appreciative when folks can find the time to and make the personal sacrifice to come here. But I always assure them they're always well represented at the table, and that's what the National Cattlemen do. They've obviously been at the table with all the farm bills I've been involved with. Certainly with the Farm Food and National Security Act of 2026, they've been at the table. And so, the members of this organization should take confidence that their voice is at the table when it comes to really shaping what I think is a transformational farm bill.
Now, speaking of the Farm Bill, it has been quite the process. We saw Phase 1 passed in the One Big Beautiful Bill. You and the House Ag Committee have been hard at work for that second Farm Bill 2.0, or Skinny Farm Bill as it's been called. How important is it to continue to push this forward, even though it seems there's been hurdles all along the way?
Well, there has been hurdles, and a lot of people that tell me that I couldn't do this, and they've been completely wrong every time. And it really is because we did this in a tripartisan way. We brought Republicans and Democrats and families, the people from American agriculture to the table. The bill that we have, the Farm Food and National Security Act of 2026, which finishes up the Farm Bill. Last July, when the president signed H.R. 1, that second title was the Agriculture or the Farm Bill title. That was 1.0. What we have today is the remaining part of it, and it was a bill that we didn't write it in Washington. We wrote it out in farm country, in ranch country. Visiting 43 different states, one territory, over 150 different listening sessions. We did it in barnyards and pastures and maintenance sheds and fire halls in different places all across the country. And so I'm really pleased with the product that we have. I think it really is transformational, and I give full credit to the voices of this organization, of the cattlemen, and all the commodity groups who came to the table to help write this bill.
Now, as we look at this Farm Bill as well, we're operating on a 2018 Farm Bill on numbers that are before 2018 as well. How important is it to get this passed and quit kicking this legislation down, kicking the can down the road per se?
Well, the 2018 Farm Bill was a great farm bill. It was well done, but this is 2026. And so what we did in 2018 isn't sufficient for 2026 and for the years ahead. And that's why it's real important that we finish this product. And I'd have to say it looks really good. We have we're preparing to bring this farm bill to the floor, and the whip count, so to speak, I guess, looks really good. We'll see at the end of the day.
Well, again, Congressman, we appreciate your time here coming in and talking face-to-face with cattlemen and women during this year's legislative conference. And again, for more information on all of these legislative priorities, especially the Farm Bill and what NCBA is advocating for, make sure and visit ncba.org.
You can help in the fight for common sense federal policies and against efforts that threaten the future of the beef cattle industry by becoming a member of NCBA. It's easy to do. Just call 866-233-3872, or you can visit the website ncba.org. Still ahead on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll take you inside the Public Lands Council Legislative Conference. Stay with us.
Cattle producers across the country work hard to care for their animals and their land. The USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service is there to help. Find out how you can work with NRCS to develop a conservation plan for your operation. Find possible funding resources for implementing conservation practices, or get free expert advice on ways to improve your farm or ranch. Visit the website nrcs.usda.gov today.
While cattle producers gathered in Washington for the NCBA Legislative Conference, members of the Public Lands Council also met to highlight the priorities of ranchers who rely on federal lands. Here's Lane Nordland with more on this event.
A lot of top priorities being discussed in Washington, D.C. during the Legislative Conference of 2026. Joining us here today is Caitlin Glover, who oversees the natural resources and federal lands end of things here at the NCBA and Public Lands Council office in Washington, D.C. And as we're here, Caitlin, it's not only an opportunity for cattlemen and women to engage with elected officials, but also be face-to-face with the agencies that make so many important decisions on behalf of producers in the countryside. How important is it for these agencies to be interactive with producers?
You know, Lane, I really can't overstate the impact that these producers are going to have, both on the Hill, but with the agencies this week. The way the federal government is set up, you have headquarters, most of the headquarters of the agencies here in Washington that are far away from the lands, whether you're talking in Florida or out in the West, far away from the lands and resources where their decisions are probably most immediately felt by cattle producers on the ground. We have producers going to the EPA, to all different types of agencies at USDA, the Department of the Interior, even over to Treasury, right? To be able to share the perspectives of small business owners, of those who need solid surface transportation, those who need efficient federal regulation, for them to just do their basic business as we need them to do to feed this country.
Now, another opportunity that producers, especially in the West, have is to engage with policy and decision makers on the value of federal lands and how that truly keeps so many producers in business and taking care of those natural resources too.
No, that's right. So in the West, we have more than 60% of the Western cattle herd and more than 50% of the national sheep herd spend some time on federal lands. We're talking about hundreds of millions of acres that provide sort of that first stage of food and fiber production in this country. And so for those producers in the West who are concerned about fire, who are concerned about water, whose landlord essentially is the federal government, they're coming to address some pretty key issues. With Congress, they're talking about the Endangered Species Act, they're talking about fire, they're talking about some of those disaster resources that we see in front of Congress this week, but they're also going to the agencies to talk about some of those longer term priorities, those grazing regulations, those larger federal constructs that take more time to implement, but have lasting considerations for their businesses and the way their kids and grandkids are going to run their operations in the future.
So as we look back on the year of 2026 so far, what were some of the wins that NCBA has seen, especially on that natural resources and federal lands front?
Sure. You know, this year we're more than a year into the Trump administration. We are seeing an increasing pace of regulatory improvements. The BLM grazing regulations are sitting in that final administrative process at the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. We're seeing them move forward in that same vein to rescind the public lands rule. But we're also seeing the agencies be really proactive about this really key question that the Trump administration is very focused on. How do we provide more access to forage? Just a few weeks ago, we saw USDA and the Department of the Interior sign an MOU to increase access to vacant grazing allotments, restock some of those allotments, create better partnerships with federal grazing permittees, things that seem so common sense we've been asking for years, but are now enshrined in that policy. That grazing MOU, the policies that we see in some of those final stages are absolutely wonderful first steps, and I expect that progress is going to continue incrementally throughout the rest of this year.
Well, again, a lot of work on your end and your staff, but also having that voice from the producers coming out to Capitol Hill is very important as well. So, Caitlin, thank you for that update. And for our friends joining us here today, if you want to learn more about the natural resources and federal lands issues that the National Cattlemen's Beef Association and the National Public Lands Council work on every single day, make sure to visit ncba.org.
Now, don't forget, the Public Lands Council works every day to support Western ranchers by advocating for them and educating decision makers on the value of livestock grazing. Learn how they're making a difference and how you can be a part of this effort at publiclandscouncil.org. We're back with more Cattlemen to Cattlemen right after this. Stay with us.
Downtown Nashville, Tennessee hosts CattleCon 2027, February 2nd to the 4th. It's the cattle industry's biggest convention, packed with valuable education, outstanding speakers, networking, and fun.
Every year I'm here, I learn something new about the cow-calf sector or feeder sector, things that are super relevant to me as a cattle rancher.
And you don't want to miss the huge NCBA trade show.
The NCBA trade show is amazing because it is everything you want to see and more.
The trade show is something that you'll never experience anywhere else. It is acres of vendors and producers interacting with one another.
There's no better place for cattlemen and women to learn and connect with fellow producers from across the country. Plus, there's top-notch entertainment and information that will help the bottom line of your cattle business. Go where the beef industry meets. CattleCon 2027. Visit convention.ncba.org for more.
Did you know you can get reimbursed for attending cattle industry educational events? The Rancher Resilience Grant helps cattle producers attend valuable programs such as Cattlemen's College and Stockmanship and Stewardship training sessions. Local, state, and national events qualify, and you can get money back to help cover registration fees and hotel costs. To apply for the Rancher Resilience Grant, go to the website ncba.org and click on the Education and Resources tab.
Join the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. NCBA is the oldest and largest national cattle industry organization working to defend your interests in Washington, D.C. And there are big benefits to being a member. You'll get news you can use in the National Cattlemen, email updates in the NCBA Beef Bulletin, plus big discounts only for NCBA members. Join by calling 866-233-3872 or online at ncba.org.
You can find all of our stories and full shows on the Cattlemen to Cattlemen YouTube channel. There are education segments, industry insights, producer profiles from around the country, and much more. Just go to youtube.com/Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
It's time for legacy photos with great shots of life on the farm or ranch, submitted by families from all across our country. Let's take a look. We'd sure like to feature your photos on Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Just send them to us through the Cattlemen to Cattlemen Facebook page, and we may use them on a future episode. Many cattle producers in Oklahoma, Kansas, and Nebraska have experienced devastating losses from the recent wildfires. The cattle community is rallying to help those in need with a variety of donations and support. Visit ncba.org to find out more about the current efforts and how you can help. Well, that wraps up this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Thanks for spending time with us. We'll see you again next week right here on RFD TV.